Won't call to order. Okay, welcome everybody. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Public Safety Committee for Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024. And I just wanted to alert everybody that there is a press conference happening at 2 o'clock that our county administrator and our director of emergency response will need to be at. So we're going to try to reorder things to cover their issues before they need to step out. But the first item of business would be public comment. Do we have any blue cards? All right. We have one. Welcome, Zach.
Welcome. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Zach Wynn. I live here in the city. I'd like to revisit an issue I've been raising for the past several months, specifically roadblocks and unpermitted shutdowns of traffic. I keep bringing this up because I don't feel like I've gotten a satisfactory answer to my questions. Specifically, what is this person expected to do when trapped by one of these roadblocks? And what disincentives are there to carrying them out? The justification for these roadblocks has changed over time, from Michael Brown's death in 2014, the shutdown of Green Street over a gas pipeline in British Columbia in February of 2020, followed by George Floyd's death. More recently, there was a shutdown of College Ave over Cornell's Memorandum of Understanding with the city of Ithaca in 2023, and now the conflict between Israel and Hamas with a shutdown of Seneca Street in February of this year. This is a solid decade plus of roadblocks in Ithaca. I noticed that many of the same people who carried out the roadblock of Seneca Street and College Ave were among those arrested for trespassing after refusing to leave Day Hall. This group of people were recently given a sweetheart plea deal with the charges against them being dismissed in about a month's time. This lack of real consequences for illegal behavior is tantamount to an endorsement of their criminal conduct, with the adjournment and contemplation of dismissal after 1 month serving to free up this faction to commit more criminal acts again in the near future. In 2020, DA Van Houten posted on Facebook that he would not prosecute low-level protest-related arrests. I am curious if that is still his official position as the district attorney. Other cities have recently seen similar roadblocks on bridges and highways, ostensibly for the cause of the Palestinian people. I can discern no disincentives to carrying out these types of roadblocks here in Ithaca. The people perpetrating them enjoy police protection and an inability to be prosecuted. Once this conflict between Israel and Hamas is resolved, another justification will be found. This summer, in the lead up to the presidential election, is certain to produce more social unrest and street takeovers. I request that members of the Public Safety Committee, individually and collectively, make clear whether or not shutdowns of roads are a legitimate form of protest, and if they are not legitimate, publicly condemn them when they do occur. People deserve to know if the law is on their side or not. Right now, it is clear the law serves to protect the people breaking it. As the chant goes among the leftists who conduct these roadblocks, whose streets are streets? And they are right. They control the roads when they feel like it. If there is nothing the police, DA, Sheriff's Office, Counsel, or Legislature are prepared to do to stand up to these mob takeovers of the road, please let people know that they are on their own so they can plan accordingly. Thank you, and I yield the remainder of my time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the committee? Seeing none, we'll proceed. And Veronica, just for your update, we have a press conference happening at 2 o'clock that some of the attendants at the meeting need to go to, so we're going to change the order a bit to get through things. But I would like to do some of the basic stuff. We have minutes from March 26, 2024. Could I get approval of the minutes put on the floor? Veronica moves.
I wasn't here, no.
You can still move, or second. Lee seconds, thank you. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, we ready to vote? All those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Chair's report. I did have an item I was hoping to ask about, but I will put it off, but I just wanted to bookmark it. If I could indicate for our sheriff, I read a news article recently about fake and expired license plates and registrations, and how since the pandemic this has become a much larger problem in the country. And at a future meeting, I'd love to hear whether that's happening in Tompkins County, and if so, what we might be doing about it. You know, certainly we don't want cars that are driving around with fake or expired plates, but more importantly, if the insurance isn't there. But if we can just save that for our next meeting. And then moving on to County Administration. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Rich.
And you have a couple resolutions. Why don't we get those out of the way, and then let's have some discussion regarding the report discussion topic. So we have appropriation from contingent fund budget adjustment, County Administration hiring a consultant for reimagining public safety, ID 12306. Could I get a, Lee moves, Veronica seconds. Do you want to speak to this?
Sure. I believe legislators are aware of this. This was to hire a consultant to work with all parties involved in reimagining public safety for purposes of collaboration and finishing the end of the 3-year pilot in a strong position.
I had 3 questions. I'll just read them off and you can jump on them. Is there a consultant identified? What is the timeline? And is there any identified process?
Sure. Yes, the consultant has been identified and has met with all of the parties and all of the parties are agreeable to working with this consultant. The timeline is, well, starting now and hopefully through the fast track through the summer to align with our budget processes. So more heavily now to the summer as on a fast track. And the process would be, again, meeting with all of the parties involved to aid and assist.
Okay. I'm assuming with this committee as well.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Great. Any questions, Lee?
Lisa, would it be budgetarily related to look at the impact of the expenditures and the dozen or so initiatives that were part of reimagining public safety?
Budgetarily related, meaning
Will that give us some type of a cost analysis?
Yeah,
of
oh,
what we've
yes.
spent?
Yes, and that's something that we are working on to bring, hopefully, to this committee. We plan to bring to this committee in May, kind of a report and, I don't know, scorecard isn't the right term, but, you know, a way to look at what was set out to be done, accomplishments, roadblocks, et cetera, and as well as budget implications.
Yeah, I'm interested just in seeing, you know, if we can quantify what the investments have been, because I think
Yes.
they're going to be more substantial than maybe some of the discussion is had here in the last few months. But
Sure. Yes, I mean, we have taken on new projects as a result of reimagining, and then some didn't get off the ground, so we spent less than anticipated. So, yeah.
Hey, Veronica.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that with a lot of the reimagining public safety programs being 3-year things ending this year, that we do have a lot of work to do, or in some cases work that the staff have done that we have to review of like what have we done with reimagining public safety and what have been the budget implications and what should we do further. But this consultant is not spearheading all that. This consultant is doing coming in to work on some just roadblocks that come up as they do with just part of the very large, multifaceted reimagining public safety program. Is that right?
Yeah, and is really focused on change management, leadership, and so it's not out of the question that she could help with the scorecard, but that's not the primary focus.
Thanks.
Yeah, my understanding was it would help us make decisions about what comes next. Is that correct?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Shauna, welcome. Just to let you know, we're reordering some business. Okay.
Thank you.
Are we ready to vote? All those in favor? This is on the consultant for
No, I figured.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, and then we have contingent fund appropriation, District Attorney's Office, District Attorney salary change pursuant to Judiciary Law 183A. And Shauna moves, Veronica seconds. And my understanding is this is pursuant to a change in New York State law. We're going to give our district attorney a small raise. Does the district attorney want this small raise? We're getting a smile from our district attorney. It does look like he's willing to accept it. Any discussion? Okay, are we ready to vote? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Great. And then, Lisa, you had a report discussion item that I'd asked you to talk to us a little bit about, and this involves our emergency shelter and the DSS and including the hospital, but I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, thanks, Rich. So last week on April 15th, I had convened a number of individuals and community leaders for a discussion because of several incidents of violence that and other concerns that had taken place in rapid succession at the County Human Services Building, as well as the St. John's Shelter, which the county contracts to operate. I'll just tell you, there were representatives from county administration there. Our DA was present, our chair and vice chair of the legislature, and chair of Public Safety Committee, Rich, chair of HED, Greg, who is homelessness is under HED this year. Dr. Stallone from the hospital attended, and Frank from Whole Health, and Kit from the DSS. And our sheriff was there, and undersheriff, and the IPD chief, and a couple of other representatives from the hospital. So on fairly short notice, this group came together at my request. The purpose was really to raise awareness and see if with those esteemed individuals around the table, we could brainstorm some solutions. But some of the incidents that had happened that I'm referring to were staff being threatened, at times assaulted, public spaces being disrupted at the Human Services Building for long periods of time, where the building was locked down because of active situations occurring in or near the lobby in the courtyard. And at the shelter, it resulted in staff either quitting or walking off the job, and several staff in a very short period of time, which really questioned and threatened our ability to continue maintaining services at the shelter. So it seemed as though I wanted individuals to understand what was happening in these spaces, and in each of these incidents, leadership at the Human Services Building and at the shelter worked with partners in law enforcement and elsewhere to try to resolve each incident as it was occurring. So this really wasn't meant to be a finger-pointing exercise, because it really pointed to broader systemic issues and systems failures. So I really wanted to see if this group could brainstorm actions that we could take that maybe that we hadn't thought of to address some of these issues, or if there were broader advocacy efforts that could be taken to address these issues. Our partners at the hospital were originally invited to see, because there are often mental health components to these issues, and that was my purpose for inviting Dr. Stallone. Dr. DeLima was also there, as well as their Chief Operating Officer, Tracy Gates. But instead of pointing to the mental health concerns, they actually, our hospital partners, pointed to the number of CMC healthcare workers that are assaulted on a daily basis at the hospital. So these issues impacted our hospital partners as much as they did our county staff and nonprofit partners. So it was, these were issues shared by all. What I took from it, or another piece that was pointed to, is that the staff that are threatened or assaulted have the option of filing for an order of protection, but they're often reluctant to do so for fear of retribution or being targeted, because they as individuals have to file for those orders of protection. So there was some more conversation about that, which our DA was helpful with navigating through. And another thing that this pointed to was with our city court judges that were issuing appearance tickets in these instances instead of arraigning individuals, the individuals in question to get a signed order of protection. So in some of these cases, these assaults occurred, and the individuals were taken by law enforcement. They were provided with an appearance ticket, and they came back to the scene and started the behaviors again. So I bring it to all of your attention that these are some serious concerns that we are seeing and that are interfering with our ability to do business.
Thank you, Lisa. And if I could just add a few comments. Thank you for having that meeting, because it brought into focus a lot of information that I wasn't aware of. I certainly wasn't aware of what was going on at our hospital. And I thank you for calling that meeting, because a discussion on this topic, I think, is long overdue. And one reason I think we've hesitated to proceed on it is it's so amazingly complicated. You know, name a county department that isn't impacted and involved in dealing with the people who are struggling with mental health issues or addiction issues and are struggling in relation to the community and public services. There's more that are involved than aren't, and then you add in all the public service agencies, the private agencies, the individuals and businesses or whatever else, and it's understandable that we've struggled to decide what to do, and certainly the same thing is replicated, I think, across our country, that we have not acted because we're not sure what to do. And that led me to think about the legislature, and I certainly don't want to overestimate our importance, but I don't want to underestimate our responsibility in regard to setting policy. And I'm afraid that because we've struggled here, we haven't achieved any kind of consensus or direction at the legislative level, where we're supposed to be representing the voice of the people. All of the different agencies, the courts, you know, are reacting as they see best, but we're not doing anything in a coordinated way. We're not looking at these individuals as individuals in a coordinated way and sharing information among parties that need to know. And we're not using all the tools, I think, that we have available, because we don't have a policy saying this is where we want to go. I think there is consensus that we don't want to try to arrest our way out of this. We can't warehouse people. It doesn't work. At the same time, there are some people that need to be taken into custody, and I refuse to believe that bail reform was intended to just not do anything. I think that bail reform is admirable and it's sensible, but at the same time, there are people that we're not helping because we have no policy to help them effectively. If you look at the mental hygiene law, there are multiple options available. There is a spectrum of responses if we do so in a coordinated way, from certainly arrest for criminal behavior, but assistance at varying degrees of involvement, all the way to outpatient treatment, but it's mandatory outpatient treatment. If we as a legislature decided to state a policy, I think we could probably do a much better job here. I'll stop talking though. I'd invite comment from other committee members or our various departments. I know that the sheriff has some information on a program that they've been working on for the last year, and I forget the acronym for it. And Dan, you have some training you were talking about, I think that's going on in Tioga County coming up, but I'd invite comment. Veronica.
I have a question first, I guess. Maybe first appreciate you bringing this, and because I certainly don't want our staff or hospital staff to have to endure assaults or harassment or whatever has been happening in the course of their duties. My question is, I still don't really understand I don't know what to envision when envisioning this problem. It's not that I don't understand what the problem is, and I don't think there is one. And I understand that it would not be appropriate to say Joe Schmo specifically, I don't know, spat on Jay Schmay, but on whatever day. But the language used was pretty vague in general, and I'm wondering if you can share any more types of specifics of when we talk about an incident and disruption in behavior, both what do you mean, and are there examples, I'm going to hope there are, of times when this similar, I don't know, behavior has been handled. See, now I'm using the vague language because I don't know what I'm talking about. Can you describe it more, and are there examples where the same type of incidents have happened but have been handled effectively, some intervention that something has done, whether in the moment or elsewise, has been effective at getting the person calmer, stabler, whatever, such that things can proceed as uninterrupted, I guess.
Sure, I think so. I think that the incidents that we're referring to, and I'll take the shelter, there were several of those, and again, I wasn't present, but from my understanding of it, they go beyond ability for staff to de-escalate situations. They are often, I believe, times where individuals may be using substances and or with some combination of mental health concern, and have destroyed property, threatened staff by name, threatened staff's family, et cetera. So, and or actually assaulted staff. So it's beyond one's ability to necessarily de-escalate. And I can speak to plenty of times where county staff and others have successfully de-escalated situations. I think that these in question go beyond that there's an escalation of behavior and violence that we're seeing in these instances. And I guess I would leave it to our partners in law enforcement that in the past I've also seen when, 10 years ago perhaps, if some of these types of behaviors were exhibited or someone was assaulted, if our law enforcement professionals could remove those individuals for longer than, a few hours, they would not come back. And I can't speak to the changes in laws or regulations that have happened in that intervening time, but what we're finding more is that law enforcement does their best to de-escalate themselves and remove the person from the situation, and they're back in an hour's time with this, doing the same behavior. So that's what we're seeing.
Shauna.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like historically I've been very sympathetic to those that are struggling, and I've really had a hard time trying to figure out the balance of making sure people are safe, providing a safe workplace, but also providing services to people who sometimes can't help themselves. And, you know, right now I look at the systems that we have in place, the shelters, the ERs, the jails, and I think what's happening right now is that we have a workforce issue, and it doesn't matter how much we're paying people. This work is super hard work, and for them to go to work and to be yelled at, for them to be physically assaulted, for some of their families to be threatened and stalked, you know, I think at some point we have to ask ourselves the questions of, if we don't have enough workforce, we're not going to be able to provide these services to the 95% of the people that are law-abiding and that truly and desperately need these services. And so, you know, we look at our shelter, we know that they're constantly looking for people to work there. They're paying as much as they can, 18, 20 bucks an hour, which, you know, to many of us is still a good wage, but it's really hard work. You look at the ER, you go in there, you could be in the ER in the waiting room for 6 to 8 hours for an earache or, you know, a broken finger. And, you know, much of this is due to the staffing. And so, you know, historically, while I think we probably, I don't want to say tolerated behaviors, I think the drugs that are on the street right now are much more powerful. They're causing really aggressive behaviors that are hurting people. You know, I don't want to be punitive, but I think there has to be some type of consequences in our community. And, you know, I don't want to confuse that with treatment as well or offering services, but I think it's all right to say if you do something that is not within the social, that is not socially accepted, there have to be some consequences to keep everyone safe.
Lee?
Just a question. The problems, are some of them related to the proximity of the shelter to DSS? Is it an overflow of issues between what's happening in one place or the other, or are we just talking in general, there's problems all over? That's kind of where I think we just headed with it, with the hospital being engaged.
Yes, I think it's in general. It's not necessarily shelter-related clients or that are coming to the HSB, though that doesn't preclude that from the mix.
I think to some extent, and again, I'm guessing, but that there's an ebb of flow of drugs in the community, and it seems like there's more methamphetamine, which tends to trigger that kind of behavior. I could certainly be wrong about that. Lance?
Just a couple of background issues here. I think the hospital has had more of a historical ongoing issue. It may have gotten worse in the ER. That's historical for them. But one of the contributing issues here, I think, with people's behavior is the disruption from the pandemic increased, exacerbated issues of mental health. And frankly, most of the mental health services are able to reach. If someone's only able to access services every 6 weeks and remotely, they're not, people in acute need aren't really being addressed, their issues, I think, which tends to help feed part of this process. Just as an FYI, things you need to think about if you're trying to look at this systemically in that regard. You know, I can't really speak to, internally in the DSS building because I'm not there. I hear stuff, but that's one of the, I think, underlying issues with some of these people in terms of systemic needs that are kind of sliding, among other things.
Sheriff, would you be able to jump the line a little bit on an issue you were going to talk about in your report regarding threat assessment.
Yeah, Rich, would you like us to jump right into that?
I think so. I think we have enough time to do it right now. And
Yeah, let me just.
it would seem to dovetail with what we're talking about.
All right, let me just start. I'll introduce Lieutenant Jeremy Ziggett. He's our administrative lieutenant. He runs civil, our training function, and a bunch of other things. But one thing he is working on now is our threat assessment task force, or team, I should say. So I'll turn it over to him, and he'll update you on how this came about and what he's been doing with his team last year.
All right, thank you. The threat assessment team started May 14, 2022, if everybody remembers the Buffalo shooting, the Tops in Buffalo. Stemming from that, 4 days later, Governor Hochul issued Executive Order 18, which created the state mandate requiring counties to develop and maintain a plan to identify and confront threats of domestic terrorism. It included the creation of a threat assessment team, which the key to a threat assessment team is a multidisciplinary approach. So you're trying to bring in all sorts of resources from law enforcement, mental health, DSS, all our partners, school districts, et cetera. Also in that was they created the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Unit, which is our oversight out of Homeland Security out of New York State. They are the ones that come in and do the training and are our liaison, or our partners in this endeavor. Throughout the fall and winter of 2022, the county created a plan in response to Executive Order 18. County administrator named our office as the lead agency on that endeavor. They identified the initial stakeholders, which included a lot of the ones we talked about, the liaison at Dan Cornell, DSS, mental health, a lot of the school district, state police partners, et cetera. Around June of 2023 was the first meetings to have the discussion of how we're going to do this. Meetings continued throughout 2023 on and off, and we're trying to figure out how to establish this team. And we're just one of the counties, everybody's doing this right now, and we're right in the middle of the pack as far as where we're at. February 2024, we held our first training. There's a 1-day awareness training and a 3-day basic or threat evaluation reporting course. The 3 days is what's going to try to be required for any member that's actually participating in the threat assessment portion of the program. The 1-day awareness is encouraged for everybody or anybody that has a stakeholder to bring and identify threats and bring it to that team. But currently, in a nutshell, we're working on developing an MOU, which is a big next step to getting all the partner agencies on board, identifying the partner agencies, making sure we have the right stakeholders, continue with the training, because I think we have roughly 12 to 14 people that have the 3-day training right now. We need to expand upon that. Beyond that, we'll work on the MOU, the whole threat assessment process. Then there's going to be a community outreach portion. Once we get up and operational, we want to push this out to the community. Now, the idea of this whole threat assessment is, like we talked about the Tops one at Buffalo, it's those things, those indicators that there's something going on with an individual, and you want that avenue for somebody to report that stuff without necessarily directing it right to law enforcement. Like I said, this is a group of multifaceted individuals that we're going to take that information, make an assessment, and make up a plan of action to protect people. Yeah, and this is more so related to domestic terrorism. A lot of it starts, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of the pathway to grievance or pathway to violence. I know Dan has done some stuff on this too. With the starts with a personal grievance. So a lot of the issues you're talking about today isn't necessarily a grievance against the county. You're talking about systemic. So the SHIELD team can play a role potentially, but not necessarily directly related to the systemic problem that we're having with the hospital, shelters, et cetera. This is more for those people that are kind of targeting or have a grievance against the county, another person, school, et cetera. The idea is to stop them on that pathway to violence, which is a whole different topic for training as far as teaching you the pathway and what the team's idea is to try and disrupt that pathway. So that's kind of a quick overview.
Thank you for the quick overview. Questions, comments? I guess I'd jump in with one that it strikes me, this is in relation to the population of Tompkins County, the people that we're seeing, it's a fairly small group relatively, and that if we were able to do a better job in a coordinated way of identifying who they are and what issues are they struggling with, we probably could direct help to them in a similarly concentrated way and probably have a pretty significant impact. And so, you know, what you're talking about there strikes me as the beginning of setting up a system to be able to do that. I certainly agree that law enforcement should be involved, but it can't just be law enforcement, that it needs to be a broader approach, and it sounds like that's what is getting built here. Thoughts? Shauna?
I guess I'm confused because this program from the Sheriff's Department is specific to domestic terrorists, and you're relating it to the people that are struggling. And I'm not sure I would necessarily have that same link. And
Maybe I'm confused because I was talking to Dan Cornell as well about a program in Tioga County, a training. Is that the same thing, Dan? Or is this different, what you're talking about?
No, the training upcoming in May in Tioga County is what Lieutenant Ziegenfuss set up for us here in Tompkins County. It's the 3-day Turk training, the basic Turk and then the 2-day follow-up.
Yeah, so what we're looking at, I think you're right, Sean, is a bit different, but the structure would seem to be the same of having a coordinated approach to figure out who is doing this and how do we help them?
I guess my question for that would be, we have LEAD. We know that that's been effective. And my guess is that at any given point, we could sit down with the sheriff and the DA and Dan Cornell, and they could probably come up with a list of 20 people that are repeat offenders that are severe strugglers here in the county. Is there a program that we can offer these 20, like intensive programming to help them? I know that LEAD is a different, it's kind of a different animal and it's a city program, but if we say top 20, are these individuals like people that might be good candidates for a program like LEAD?
Yeah, and I agree with you. LEAD, it's great we have it in the community, but the issues Lisa has identified are happening at the same time we have LEAD. So, yeah. Dan, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. Thank you. Just for the benefit of everyone, that Turk course that was put on up here was the best training I've been to in 30 years in this field. So if people want to sign up for the one in Tioga County, I believe they still have spaces. I would love if LEAD could address some of the issues of some of the folks that we're talking about, but IPD has a CARES team now. Sheriff's Department has had a CARES team for a while. We're talking about some individuals that are completely unmotivated to change, don't believe they need to make any changes, and are, to my knowledge, a couple of them the CARES team won't even meet with anymore because they've stalked the CARES team members. So if they could be effectively addressed at LEAD, I would be amazed, surprised, and very happy. I think although we're talking about domestic violence, domestic terrorism, some of the things that are happening border on that level of terror for the people who are involved, who are being stalked, threatened, assaulted at their jobs. So while it's not domestic terrorism in the sense of a national threat or a statewide threat, I mean, these are some individuals with extreme propensity for escalation of violence to the point where we have an active shooter, active killer type of situation here. That's my biggest concern. And I don't know what mechanisms we currently have in place or we could put in place to try to treat somebody who's unwilling to be treated.
Thanks. Dan, could you give us the date for that training, if you have it at hand? In the meantime, I'll go to Matt and then Veronica.
I have it right here. Oh,
That's all I did. I'll find it and let you.
Okay, go ahead, Matt.
So the LEAD program requires that the person be coherent enough and willing enough and able to process the decision of, will I be arrested or will I connect with services? So as Stan described, there are people that don't fit in that category because they don't think they need help and they are otherwise in too much trauma, psychiatric trauma, to make that decision to connect with LEAD. If we had some kind of mental health crisis center, that would be a huge resource to divert those individuals from the ER or from some other scenario to a place that can adequately address their crisis and stabilize them and then help them, and also separate them from the place where they're creating havoc. That's something we don't have right now. But, and this goes to the issue with the emergency room. People in the emergency room they recognize that when people are there in trauma, the professionals there are trying to help them. And sometimes violence happens in the course of that trauma. And I don't think the professionals, the doctors and nurses, want to prosecute people for that. But then there's also when people cross the line and it is intentional, it is with the criminal intent to assault someone. Those are cases that should be prosecuted. But doctors don't really want to prosecute people, their patients. So it's not that they are afraid, it's that it's inconsistent with the philosophy of helping people in many ways. They're not afraid of having an order of protection. That's not the issue. The shelter is a different story altogether, but that's, I think, what's going on in the hospital. And I'd like to have a meeting with the sheriff and the hospital and the state police to talk about the best way to address issues that are potentially criminal in the ER and in the hospital. So I'm hoping we can set that up soon.
Hey, Veronica.
Couple thoughts. One, there was some talk about can we put these people into some sort of program that can help them? And I'm sure we all know it would be something would need to be varied and different for different people. I think I agree with Matt that if we had a mental health crisis stabilization center or something, that would be helpful. I think some of wouldn't solve all these problems, but I would bet that a lot of the folks causing disruptions would be helped by things like stable housing, which is not, I think, something that traditionally comes with, treatment or behavioral correction programs, but I think it can go a long way towards stabilizing someone. Or, if someone is off their rocker on a drug bender in their own home where they're comfortable and familiar, they might be having a bad time, but then maybe they'll sober up and everything will be okay, as opposed to if they're in the same state in, for example, the ER waiting room or the shelter where they're surrounded by maybe strangers and stimulation and who knows what, and things can escalate. I think that mental health treatment, like Lance said, or in a lot of cases, I bet that some sort of medication would go a long way toward supporting these people. How one figures out what that is and gets someone with connected to the appropriate doctor who can treat and prescribe and all that, I don't know. But I would imagine that can go a long way in some scenarios. So I guess this maybe sounds unhelpful because I'm thinking more broadly, but I think some of these basic needs would help a lot. I'm also curious, this is a public legislature meeting is probably not the right place for this sort of discussion, but a discussion that seems helpful is thinking about specific known individuals that are cause repeat disturbances or whatever. I'm envisioning the list Shauna hypothetically brought up that I bet some of the folks here on this call could put together. But I wonder if for some or any of these people, and it's not going to be like the same people year after year. So maybe I'm more describing a dream process. If for those folks, can we, like, I guess we, the authorities, find people who are or are not also the authorities who know these folks personally and can say some more about what is going on with them, what works to like connect with them, because I know that, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine that some of our emergency response people or people who work in like these sort of crisis response-ish spaces are interacting with people only when they are like upset, activated, in a rage, maybe like super high on something, maybe in a like psychotic episode of some kind. And some of these same people are going to be spending some of their time like pretty like calm and fine and lucid, but the same people who respond to them in a crisis might not get the chance to get to know them in that other state. And I don't think I see a lot of connection between both the person in crisis and the authority figures and, you know, I don't know, their friend Joe who like hasn't talked to the police about them but totally knows some useful information that could help.
Hey, Mike.
I was just wondering, have we talked to Marty about a timeline on the mental health? I mean, we've talked a lot about the mental health stabilization unit, the need of it. I mean, we had it on the docket. I didn't know if we had an update on that. I know there's a timeline on the money being spent, right? We had allocated $1.5 million. And if Cuyahoga Medical isn't going to be going in that direction, do we approach other partners to make that happen?
Lisa.
I have had a conversation. I know Cuyahoga Medical is very much wanting to move in that direction. The new variable in the equation is that the Alcohol and Drug Council has closed its doors, and OASIS is working through our whole health department, Frank, about putting those services out to the community for RFP. It's assumed that CMC and perhaps others will apply and be a part of that process. So I think the potential scope of their project would be very much influenced by that RFP and the timing of the RFP. And I know Frank is working with OASIS to move that process along as soon as possible.
Do those two things have to be married? I mean, a detox center and a mental health stabilization unit, why? I mean, it seems like they're trying to marry something together. Why can't they operate independently? I mean, eventually they could get married, but.
Just date.
Right, they could date for, you know. I mean, why can't we move ahead kind of with the one thing that we actually have funding for, and then the detox center, obviously, we can keep working on?
We maybe end up being forced to do that, but I think that they see some, in terms of workforce, and you know, I think there's a lot of interconnectedness between the two that they would like to be able to interweave if possible.
They're kissing cousins.
No, and I get that. I mean, no, I mean, I see the overlap as well, but I mean, the money's got to be spent by a certain time, and it just seems like the building's sitting up there, I think, relatively empty. I mean, that could become your mental health stabilization unit, and then you add on later. It doesn't seem like you have to have the whole apple at one time.
Correct, but the unit, the building itself is part of the RFP. Mm-hmm. So I think that there would be cost efficiencies to be gained per Marty if we were able to do it as one. If we're not able to, then within the time frame, then we may have to make other plans.
Okay, we're running out of time on this discussion, but I don't think we've finished it. I think there's a lot more to say here. But Lance, you had your hand up. I didn't want to leave you hanging there.
Oh, I was just going to quickly suggest, you people were talking about, this is probably a small group. It may be useful to start to collect information on these instances, like a person presents, how did a person present? Let's say at DSS or at the shelter, and then what occurred to try to, if you identify commonalities there, not just people, but in terms of what's occurring, that may help you determine some best approaches to try to address it.
Okay. Well, more to come here, I think. This is a welcome start. Dan, did you have something?
Yeah, Rich, you had asked me to provide you with the dates for the Tioga County training. It's May 21st, 2nd, and 4th, 3rd.
Thank you. Okay. Michael, I know you need to go, right? But if you wanted to come up briefly, perhaps we could do the resolution you have on the agenda. This is authorization to accept 2023-2024 Local Government Efficiency Grant, Department of Emergency Response, ID 12374, and you have a revised version on your desks. And Shauna moves it, Veronica seconds. I don't know if you want to speak to this. This is the one grant we applied for to help support the EMS program. This is great. Questions, comments? Okay.
Seems a very exact amount. Is there
Yes.
no change in there that they wanted?
All right. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor? That's unanimous. And I am cognizant you need to go downstairs, but let's see, on page 31 of the agenda, I just wanted to note the report you prepared on the rapid medical response. Thank you for that. And I was struck by two items. One is that you do show some ambulance calls that were canceled because our rapid medical response arrived and determined an ambulance was not necessary. And then at the bottom, you're showing instances where rapid medical response arrived and then an ambulance was needed and the additional time it took for an ambulance to arrive. And I'm not criticizing the ambulance, this is just the state of what we have. This is a very limited sample, but it does seem to indicate it's working. It's doing what we wanted it to do. You're nodding your heads yes. You should say yes. 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 Okay. Good news, but this is a very short time period, so I guess we'll hopefully see the trend continue next month. Did you have anything else before?
Yeah, just a quick update. So the numbers that were provided in the TomStat report only reflected the first 8 days. We're currently up to 16 days of being in service, and we've been dispatched to 61 calls. So we're averaging about 3.8 calls per 12-hour period, which is pretty phenomenal. So,
is that about what you expected?
I think it's actually a little bit more than we were expecting at this point. So yeah.
Okay.
We will start looking at our response times as well to put those into future reports.
And for acronym world, what's PTA and TEMS?
PTA is prior to arrival. My apologies. And what was the other one?
TEMS.
Tompkins EMS. Tompkins County EMS.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any questions, comments? I know you guys got to go to a press conference where we're going to have a happy announcement regarding rapid medical response, is my understanding. Okay. Thank you. And why don't we pick up our agenda where we left off. Let's go to the sheriff's office. Welcome, Sheriff, and I see you have some people with you.
Thanks, Rich. I'd like to start off by introducing Warren Harrison. As everybody knows, I think by now, Ray Butts, our corrections captain, is retiring probably end of November-ish. We've been fortunate enough to find Lauren from Steuben County, who started, I don't know, 3 weeks ago? Yes. 3 weeks ago, and she's working alongside Captain Bunce to get the feel of things, and will take over for him entirely when he retires. We were very, very fortunate to get her. She comes highly experienced. Like I said, she started with Steuben County in corrections, going all the way back to 2007. She worked as a correction officer for several years, was promoted in 2014 to sergeant. In 2019, was promoted to lieutenant. Has an extensive array of training that would be very useful to us. And before all that, she was in the Marine Corps for about 4 years. So very experienced. We're really happy to have her. We feel very fortunate. I think you should too in our community. So I just wanted to start by introducing Laura.
Okay, well, welcome to Tompkins County. Is there anything you want to share with us?
No, I am very pleased and to start my career here and be able to finish my career out with Tompkins County.
Okay, all right. Well, again, welcome. Anybody? Questions, comments for our new? Okay. All right, and Sheriff, I think you were also going to share some information regarding the, it's not the SWAT program anymore. Please give me the right title.
I'm having a hard time with that. Many years of calling it SWAT, but it's SRT. If you would like, we prepared a short PowerPoint on call activity related to county involvement with the SRT team. We'd love to go through that with you. It should take.
Yes, please.
All right. Let me introduce Kyle Koskinen. He's our road patrol lieutenant at the sheriff's office. He also has many years experience on the team himself, was team leader, and is also our liaison with the team for the sheriff's office. So basically every time SRT services are needed, it usually starts with a phone call from whatever jurisdiction or agency is looking for help to him, and then it goes to the undersheriff and myself. But with that said, I'll turn it over to him. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, Kyle Koskinen. I spent 15 out of 20 of my years with the combined special response team. With Tompkins, 8 of those I served as a team leader. Just to give a brief definition, Specialized Response Team, known as SRT, is a designated group of law enforcement officers who are selected, trained, and equipped work as a coordinated team to resolve critical incidents that are so hazardous, complex, or unusual that it may exceed the capabilities of first responders or investigative units. The primary characteristic of SRT teams that distinguishes them from the other teams is the focus of the effort. SRT teams are focused on tactical resolution as opposed to other functions such as investigation. Currently, the authorized staffing is 20 members, 15 from the City Visitor's Department and 5 from the Sheriff's Office. At the Sheriff's Office, we currently have 1 opening. I believe right now the city has 3. In 2016, Ithaca Tompkins SRT received a New York State SWAT team certification as a Tier 2 team in New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services. At the time, SRT was only the 8th team in New York State to receive the certification. We have maintained the certification since 2016 through a series of annual compliance reviews. All serving members of the team must have completed the DCJS, the Department of Criminal Justice Services SWAT Operator Course, or SWAT Equivalency Course. All serving members will complete the annual NPTC approved SWAT in-service training. The team will train as a team for a minimum of 24 days per year. That's 192 hours of minimum training. Members trained with specialty capabilities, for example, SCBA, advanced repelling, robot operators, train an additional 8 hours minimum per year on their specialty areas. For each team, members will also train additional days. Standard training will include, but it's not limited to the following topics: high-risk warrant service planning and execution, hostage rescue, handling a barricaded subject, building hallway room, stairwell clearing techniques, high-risk vehicle takedowns, stealth and dynamic entries, officer-victim rescue techniques, chemical agents and ammunitions, noise flash diversion device deployment, weapons use in the tactical environment to include shooting and protective masks, immediate action, rapid deployment, dignitary protection, public venue protection and overwatch, legal issues and use of force.
Yeah. As everybody knows, and just a reminder, when Police Reimagination started, a lot of things involved the SWAT team at the time, a lot of community say and how that team should be run, what it should be called. And this is simply just a reminder that, a lot of work went into that in rebranding the team. At the time I worked with the IPD chief, I believe it was John Jolie at the time. The SWAT vehicle was changed in color. It went from black to white. A lot of work was done with uniform changes, making the uniforms look a little less military-like. Also several operational changes, and that is when we did change the team from SWAT to SRT to give it a more, I want to say friendly name, but didn't have quite the connotation that the term SWAT has had for so many years.
Well, if I could just jump in, that name change also reflected more accurately the type of activities that the group has been engaged in the community, to my understanding, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, so I'll touch on the authorization for deployment of the team. The sheriff or chief executive officer of the requesting jurisdiction will approve the activation or assignment of SRT outside the city of Ithaca pursuant to provisions of General Municipal Law 209-M and 119-0. Any deputy or supervisor may make the request for the use of the team. Such requests will be made through the chain of command. Final approval must be made by the sheriff for deployments outside of the city of Ithaca, but within the county of Tompkins. For SRT activations requested by the sheriff, the SRT team operates under general direction of the sheriff. For deployments authorized by IPD, the SRT team operates under the general direction of the chief of police. Operation and function of the team is guided by a mutual aid assistance, an intermunicipal agreement, and a specialized response team standard operating procedures document. All pre-planned requests for deployment of the SRT team will undergo an evaluation through a risk assessment matrix. Risk assessment is based on facts and circumstances stated in the affidavit for the warrant, criminal history of suspects, and targeted location. The details learned from the target scout and any intelligence needed from the definitive information gathered during the conduct of the investigation. All areas checked should be supported by documentation, and hearsay is not acceptable. Risk matrix was developed by the NTOA, or National Tactical Officers Association. So for example, this is a risk matrix that has assigned points. If points are not high enough for the team to be utilized, then patrol will deal with serving a warrant. If the points add up to enough where there's consultation with the team commander, or the sheriff will have a meeting with that and determine whether the team is used or not. If you exceed the amount of points, then the team will be used based on the threat assessment. After receipt of the request for warrant service and risk assessment matrix, the team commander will determine if the warrant meets the requirements, SWAT service by the SRT team, and the final decision in determining the method for service of the warrant. Then we'll seek approval through the chief of police or sheriff for the use of the team.
I think it's just to summarize what Lieutenant Koskinen just stated. The way it works, being that it's a joint team between the city and the county, if an incident happens in the county where SRT team is used, that falls under the sheriff's office. I would be tasked with making those decisions and handling the scene and how things unfold. And if it's in the city, that obviously switches to the chief of police. I think I've been in office 5-6 years now. We really use the SRT team extremely rarely and only under the most trying and dangerous of situation. It is, in my mind, considered a last resort, only used when we absolutely. We just put together a quick synopsis of all the times the SRT team has been utilized by our office since going back to 2021. This first one, and you can read as well as I can read it to you, that was the first incident was the one I'm sure you all recall. We had a shooting in the city of Ithaca. The suspect fled, ended up in Cuba Heights, and so a search was underway. We had to bring in the team because we had information that the suspects were armed. They were in a residential area, and we used the team to search and maintain the area until located. You'll also see there was one approved by me on April 8th of 2021. That was on behalf of Tioga County, actually, which is very, very rare. We offered to provide assistance to the state police to apprehend an armed individual who obviously did a lot of bad things, set a car house and a bunch of land on fire. 2022, we actually had no activations of SRT through the sheriff's office. However, we did have the FBI request assistance from us and our team to identify and locate suspects that they needed to take in custody. And then we had the incident in the city of Ithaca, and we have that on there because it involved the county building and county employees that were dealing with the subject. It was in possession of a weapon and making threats to the city of Ithaca. 2023, October 24th, I activated the team. This is Broome County on Slaterville Road. That was a robbery suspect that was believed to be armed that fled Broome County and came into our county. And the major use of the team then was just to locate him, search exercise. The person had fled into a wooded area. We had to provide safety for residents in the area, secure the area, and we subsequently located him, I believe, the next morning. Again, May 30th, state police requested our assistance, and that was in relation to a very major homicide that we had in this area. 2024, we so far have not activated the team ourselves. There was a couple that you'll see there that we approved, or I approved. One was on behalf of the police department. They had to do some work in the county where they don't have jurisdiction, so the team was used for that. And then lastly, George Green, Joe Hawes, charged with criminal possession of a weapon. That was I'm sorry, that was the same incident. I think that's it. So like I said, we don't use the team a lot. It's a last resort. We only use it when we feel we have it. So I hope that gives you some indication of how often the team is used by the sheriff's office in the county.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Questions, comments? You know, anybody? I would jump in to say I don't see anything there where there appears to be a controversial call out of the team, that the circumstances seemed pretty dangerous and required an organized response. I think it's working the way it's supposed to, but anybody else? Veronica.
Thanks for the presentation. I can't remember the specifics right now, but I recall, I think I'm matching the incident, the November 2021 incident with like the chase of the shooter up into Cayuga Heights. Correct me if I'm mixing it up with other things, but I think like there was some community concern afterwards, not about the call out of the team, I don't think, but about the way alerts were put out about that. But I might be thinking of a different similar incident. But that had everyone, a lot of people sort of unnecessarily terrified for a couple hours. Can you, I guess, speak to that or correct me if I'm wrong?
You were thinking of the correct incident, Veronica, one. Yeah, I don't think they were unnecessarily terrified, but that was at the hands of the suspects. I don't believe it was anything county specific that we did or didn't do that caused that problem. You know, we always go through issues when we do siren alerts and try to notify the community, and you're stuck with making that decision when you have an armed gunman in their neighborhood running through backyards where there's families and children, and that's exactly what we had at that point. That terrifies people. It terrifies us. I think we handled it appropriately. I think we did have some issues with some siren alerts. I don't think they caused people to be concerned, but we oftentimes run into situations where people say they got the alerts or they didn't get the alert. They want to know why they didn't get it. And we always make a judgment call on how extensive we're going to expand that alert notification. I found in my experience that no matter how wide of a sweep of the community we try to set that alert to, for some people it's never big enough. Actually, I've had people want the entire county notified. So I don't know. I can't recall anything that really went wrong that caused anybody to be concerned, but there was some pushback regarding the alert system notification.
Okay, thank you. I'll just say, not to you, Sheriff, but for anyone listening, if you want alerts from the whole county, you can just sign up for all of the alerts from all of the towns, and you get irrelevant street cleaning alerts, because that's what I did and that's what I get, but it can be nice.
That was a nice one.
Okay. Lee, did you have something?
No, it's just good, and I thank the team for the presentation. It's good for us to be reminded of the tremendous resources that are out there in the public safety community, and especially these that may not be used often, but where time is of the essence. And I know the team and the resources they got were built with a lot of local dedication and a lot of outside dollars to get us to those capabilities. And I'm glad to see this reminder in front of us today. And thank the team for their continuing dedication.
Yes. Okay. All right. Sheriff, do you have anything else you want to report to us on today?
Just a couple very quick things, Rich. Again, the GIFT grant, for those listening, the Gun Involved Violence Elimination Grant that the Sheriff's Office handled over this past year. We've talked about the success of the program, I think, in our very last meeting, and results that we saw come from that. As everybody knows, or I think remembers, that grant was originally targeted towards the city of Ithaca and the Ithaca Police Department. We took that on when they weren't able to. We're very happy to help IPD and the community in the city of Ithaca. But going forward, they are applying for the grant. The next grant cycle starts July 1st. So they are going to be in receipt of the funds and come up with task force activities, decide how best to spend the money in continuing this fight to stop any violent crime. Just wanted to pass that along. Again, we were happy to help. We're happy to have them in a better position where they feel they can take this on, and we'll bring them in that endeavor. Lastly, our care team, crisis alternative response and engagement, has been going extremely well. It's getting noticed throughout the state, especially with the New York State Sheriff's Association. The undersheriff and I will be going to Albany Friday to give a presentation on the team, how it came about, how it works. For other sheriff's offices in the state that may be interested in, the first conference Friday is a victim organization that is a conference brought in by the Sheriff's Association. We're going to present there. And then later on in the year, we're going to present at the Sheriff's Association again at the Undersheriff Conference, the White Undersheriff Conference. Hopefully we'll see more communities following the lead in Tompkins County and maybe creating more teams in their jurisdiction. So excited about that.
That is very good news. I do notice that on our desk we have an additional resolution that's not on the agenda having to do with remaining funds from the 2023 GIVE grant. And I assume we need a motion to add this to the agenda. Lee moves, Veronica seconds. Discussion on adding it to the agenda? All those in favor? That's unanimous. All right. And I should have announced it. This is the multi-year authorization to accept the gun-involved violence elimination GIVE 2023-2024 grant, Sheriff's Office, ID 12380. Sheriff, is there anything you want to say about this? It looks like you're just transferring the remaining funds into your 2024 line.
That's exactly it, Rich. The grant cycles never coincide with our budget cycle, and sometimes we got to carry funds over to get the work done. So that's all that is.
Okay, any questions or comments from the committee? All right, are we ready to vote? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Good. Sorry, I almost forgot that one. Okay, let's keep going. We have our district attorney with us. Matt, welcome.
Thanks, Rich. We are continuing to look at the dashboard, the data dashboard that's been up in my office for 6 or 7 months now, I think. Trying to look at ways to expand the data that's put out to the community. And I've just signed on to be part of a project that is looking at plea tracking. So it's going to be an additional process to track how we handle felony cases from start to finish, what factors go into decisions, offers, how cases are resolved, and looking to identify trends or issues that we can learn from. So that's being it's a study that's being run by RTI International and Duke University, and they're going to have several DA's offices from across the country participate in the study. But I'm excited to start that and to learn from that. And then we are looking for an assistant DA. We're one prosecutor short. We need an attorney. We've got no applicants at this point, so anybody who knows anybody who is an attorney who wants to work as a prosecutor in Tompkins County, please apply.
Okay. Any questions or comments for our district attorney? I received word that the new grand jury space has been completed in the basement. Have you started using that?
We have started using it. It's credit to facilities and ITS in Tompkins County. They did a fantastic job of fitting the space in the basement of the county courthouse for our use as the grand jury room. We were borrowing space from the Office for the Aging for a couple of years now, since COVID hit, and we weren't able to use the very small room that we had been using pre-COVID. So it's great. We love it. We've used it for 2 weeks now, and it's working out great. And so that's definitely a happy thing.
Okay. I was in the courthouse. I went to take a look, but they've legislator-proofed it. The doors were locked, so I didn't see it. Anyway, that's good news. Anything else for us? No? Okay. Department of Probation and Community Justice. I see Dan is with us. Welcome.
Thank you. First, just in light of the shooting death of 2 officers in Onondaga County, I just wanted to send my condolences to the families of Michael Jensen and Lieutenant Mike Wolkusik of the Onondaga County Sheriff's Department. These are the types of things that could easily happen here. And if you read some of the reporting on that, the individual who conducted the shooting might have benefited from Onondaga County having a TAMS team, because apparently there were some warning signs that were missed. We had our first graduate from Fundamentals of Probation Practice last Friday from the Monroe County Law Enforcement Academy. Christina Davidson completed the 4-week program. Still has 9 weeks to go for basic course for peace officer later on this year. Was very impressed by the graduation ceremony and the fact that it was a great learning experience for her. So we thank Monroe County also for providing that training academy to 14 new probation officers in the state. Other than that, things are good here. A lot of training opportunities going on. We're working on our probation dashboard, expecting to release that by early this summer, at least in pieces. So we'll be parceling that out as we get the website off the ground. And I think that's about it for today.
I was looking at your supervision numbers. They seem to be trending in line with where they've been and continued.
They've been fairly stable since in the last 12 months.
Okay, and you have a resolution, budget adjustment, appropriation from contingent fund, terminal pay, Department of Probation and Community Justice, ID 12271. Veronica moves. Lee seconds. This is a standard terminal pay resolution. Are there any questions or comments on it? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor? Unanimous? Okay. Any questions or comments for our Director of Probation? All right. Seeing none, thank you, Dan. And then Lance, you're with us. Welcome.
Great, thank you, Rich. I'll start with the good news. Update on the state budget. The state's is approving the $92 million. They're going to continue the partial reimbursement for the 18B attorney costs again this year. I mean, that was kind of expected, but it's, until they sign on the dotted line, you never really know. So that's done. We'll have to watch for next year. Generally, the legislature is more supportive of 100% funding. The executive, I think, at times would just as soon give it all back to the county. But that was done. There's a resolution we get to at the end. We have a resolution. We have our new contract to continue our county's monies through the statewide expansion of Hurl Herring funding. We completed our first contract. That was a 5-year contract that was approved 5 years ago. This is the follow-on. They're moving to 3-year contracts, but this continues funding. This money helps support some of our salary costs, covers our costs, a lot of the costs for their cap participation, and a lot of specialized services, training, and so forth that we are able to access and avoid having to turn to the county for these things. So that's a good thing. It's about $2.5 million over the course of 3 years, so it's a significant amount of funding for us on that. Our next thing, kind of good news, our numbers for the first quarter, our case numbers were down about 105, more so on the family court side, a little bit on the felony side. We're kind of tracking this. We'll have to see if this is just a, kind of a data blip, it shoots back up in the second quarter type of thing. But it's good news, particularly on the family court side, if this is an indication that kind of that big wave we had of dealing with family court cases is kind of passing. So we'll track this, and by July or October, we'll have a better sense if this is just a little blip or if it's showing if it means something more than that on that.
Lance?
Yeah.
You said that there was a trend going on. Is that pandemic related, that we'd seen more family court?
Well, family court, yeah, because what happened to us with the pandemic, they really shut down, with the court shutdown, they shut down a lot of the family court cases. So, if you look at our numbers year to year, they don't look that much different, but a lot of those cases in 2019, 2020, into 2021, sat there and then came into court, started 2021, 2022, into 2023, which really blew up the caseloads for the attorneys in the courts, and which was one of our major concerns. So it's nice to see that may be moderating. But yeah, that was the hope and kind of concern was, there were a couple factors there, but one of them was the pandemic we knew had created a surge, and we were kind of waiting to see if and when that surge would start to cease.
Thank you for your quarterly report. I did have a couple questions. Just to be clear, that the numbers you're showing here they're new cases. So those are new.
Yes, these are all new cases. The numbers we give you are all new cases that come in each month, broken down by category and then by court. You can see the court, which courts are the most active.
So that you would have another number of all the matters that are being managed, I assume. Because a lot of these are going to go past for more than a month, right? So you've got multiple.
Oh, yeah. These are all, well, if you look at family court, I can safely say probably at least 80% of these are still ongoing. Family court cases don't tend to resolve as much. With felony cases, similarly, most of those are probably ongoing. They're not settled. It's unusual for a felony case to resolve in a month. They can, but the process there, even if you get a plea, takes it out. A higher percentage of the violations and misdemeanors will resolve in a period of months. So those tend to resolve more quickly. Violations of probation and parole generally take a little longer, just the process for those to occur and get resolved.
Yeah, it might be interesting just to see a total number under management, just a snapshot, just to give a sense of the volume that you're holding in your office, basically. But if that's hard to do, please don't worry about it. It was just get a sense of it. I did have a couple other questions. One is, I think I asked these before, but because this is a new report, specials and non-mandates. Could you explain what those are?
Specials are, they tend to be, they cover a couple things for us. They may cover a second chair or a mentoring assignment. We assign those as a special. They could be, for instance, if someone comes in, sometimes, it may come from the DA's office or someone they want to question, or someone who needs to be questioned and they need an attorney. We do that as a special. Non-mandates are ones, we get a few of these, for instance, out of the town courts, where they'll contact us and they have someone in violation of, let's say, I think one of the stranger ones, we have a village code ordinance where they're actually looking at jail time. And because of the jail, we normally don't cover those, but because the potential for incarceration was there, and frankly, the person was ineffective in trying to represent themselves, the court requested an assignment. And we call that a non-mandate. Oftentimes, like in that case, we're able to avoid incarceration. On that, they tend to be cases that, in a few cases, we've had court appoint a guardian ad litem in a family court matter, which is technically not our mandate. We tend to discuss those with the court, but sometimes we're stuck with them. That's kind of the general idea of what we're covering there.
Okay, and then I see you have 11 violations. Typically, those aren't covered by assigned counsel. I assume those are associated with other charges?
No, those are covered by us. We're required. Those are, a non-criminal violation would be a disorderly conduct, harassment second, a simple trespass. So those are part of our mandate, actually, because of the potential for incarceration, a number of other collateral consequences. Those tend to resolve very quickly. For the most part. There are always a few that drag on. Sometimes those resolve at the initial court appearance, oftentimes.
Okay.
But you are also correct. Well, no, those would be these violations you're seeing are not associated with another case, Rich, just to clarify.
Okay, thanks. Any questions, comments on the quarterly report? Right. I see you have a resolution. This is acceptance of funding from Office of Indigent Legal Services for the second upstate expansion of Hurl Herring contract to support the provision of program services for assigned counsel panel attorneys and costs of program staff. ID 12371. Could I get a motion? Veronica moves. Lee seconds. This is the resolution you were just talking about. This is a 3-year funding.
That's correct.
And I assume from this, we're in year 1?
Right. This grant starts April 1st of this year.
So this locks in that you will get this funding in 25 and 26 as well?
Through, let's see, 24 to 25, through April of 27 is the end date, or March 31st, 2027 is the end date. It locks in that funding for that amount.
Okay. All right, questions or comments on the resolution? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Great. Anything further for our Director of Assigned Counsel? Seeing none, thank you, Lance. All right.
Sure.
Is there any other business to come before the Public Safety Committee? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Veronica moves. Mike seconds. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.